How are you?
Oh, pretty good, I think. I'm so spoiled by so many people. People are so nice to me that I wonder, do I really deserve all this? It's just very nice. I'm very honored.
It's quite something, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
the what is it like to have a retrospective of your work? What is that like to have a retrospective of your work out there?
Well, it's wonderful not just for me, but for all the people that are in those documentaries. And also, every one of these films I always think of teachers and the educational system. I want these documentaries to be where they are. And those are the reasons, because I was very appalled with, for so many generations, what they were teaching in terms of the history of this country. So I'm so happy that I've lived this long to see the difference. So much changes. And just the court cases that I filmed and that we filmed and did documentaries with since 2010. There's 6 or 7 films that I made, and it really deals on justice and health problems and how laws are unfair towards our people and all those things. But in the 60s, the early 60s, I was very much in courtrooms for a period of time, mainly because I was part of a tour in many schools in the country, including a residential school at that time. And I also went and sat in courtrooms to just watch what was going on. You'd see a lineup of mostly men and women also, indigenous people. And you'd hear a voice say, blah, 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 your name is this, you're guilty of this, so many days in jail, and you pay a fine or one or the other. And none of them were saying anything, standing there. And I thought, I was so angry. I said, they don't have a place to speak. You're guilty, that's it. And I used to feel so bad about that. And I remember that one time a lawyer who was very connected to human rights came, and he said to this Indian man outside, he said, how much money do you have? And that man said, I don't have any money. He says, come on, you must have some money. He said, I don't have money. Well, he says, let me see, empty your pockets. And he did, and he had 17 cents. I'll never forget this. Excuse me. And the lawyer said, give me the 17 cents. I'm going to defend you. That'll be my fee. I never forgot that. It was just so incredible. And all these years went by, and, when I've been in court so much covering what's been happening, for me to see our people in court, to be so respected, to have a say, to be heard. Even at times they were singing some small ceremony before the case would start. It was a human rights court. That has made my life, and I've seen the difference, how bad it was. And so just that alone is one place where I really appreciate all the people that are working and wanting to make justice to our people. And I also feel, as I travel across the country all the time, not this last year though, I see more clearly and feel more how much people want to see justice to our people. And also there's good people everywhere. And I'm just, I'm living a time that it's much more profound than hope, what I feel. And
it's more profound than hope.
Yes, it's real. It's not just surface or phony things saying to people to make them feel better. It's real. There are changes. Sure, there are things that are still not there, but there are a lot of changes. And I find in the attitude and in the mind of Canadians as such in general.
I tell you what I find interesting about your storytelling is that when you first started telling stories, you were doing it through music.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, it all started because I had a pretty bad life as a child, in school especially. I got beat up a lot. And when you're in it, you don't understand. Yeah, I was a young girl. And one time I got thrown out of school.
Why?
The teacher had said to us, I imagine the Friday, that the devoir, your homework, was to read a Bible story and to learn it. And so I get home and I start reading. It was called, it was in French, L'Histoire Sainte, the saint history. And I read the story once, and I knew the story. Monday I go back to school, and there was 32 students in the classroom, and I was kind of at the end of it. And the teacher, the school that I went to, it was mostly nuns that were teaching there, but there was one person who was not a nun. She was an ordinary person, and she was the teacher. I was in grade 4, I think. So she asked one of the students, and the student didn't know the story, just a few words here and there. And okay, next, you tell the story. And as she went along, there was just a few lines, and it was obvious that they didn't learn the story. And by the middle or so, she starts screaming. She's really screaming very loud at the kids because reprimanding them. And me, I'm thinking, I hope she asks me because I know the story. So would you believe, finally she gets to me, and I told the story as if I had the book in front of me. It was no problem. Her reaction was, she says, why, you little savage, get out of my class. I never want to see you in my class again. And she threw me out of school. And I picked up my school books and everything, and I walked home. And then my parents said, how come you're here so early? I said, I've been thrown out of school. So they said, well, you must have done something very bad. And I told what happened. So my father said, stay here. And the next day, the teacher sends a child to come. We didn't have phones, or, we were poor people. And she sent a child to find out why I'm not in school. So my father took me. In those days, they call it the inspector. And the inspector was in a different building. You had to go to a different place. And I went there with my father, and I was asked to tell my story. And so obviously I had to go back to school. So my father said to the inspector, she insulted my child in front of all the class. She's going to have to apologize in front of the class. And the inspector said, she will. And I went back to school. Mademoiselle Leroux was her name, stood up, and she apologized to me. But in other words, I got thrown out because I knew my lesson. So me, I was a young girl. I was wondering, what's the message like? That was the atmosphere of my time in those days. So, as I got a little bit older, I realized there's something really wrong. And by the time I was 12, my father died, and I was, it was very, very difficult.
How did he go?
Tuberculosis of the bones. And I was there when they buried him, but in my mind, I was sure he was going to come back. I used to write him letters, and I would walk on the street and thinking, maybe I'll meet him on this street. Yeah. Isn't that weird?
I still feel that way sometimes.
Yes.
I still feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
I lost my father too, when I was young, and I've never
feel the presence.
I still sometimes, maybe I'll see him.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
I'm glad you understand.
Yeah. So I understand.
Yeah. So, then as I grew a bit older, I didn't want other children to be treated like I was. And this is where it started. I thought, I know my history. I know lots of stories. I'll go. I think the children have to hear another story. And go and tell them stories. So I started with a group of scouts. And I traveled with them, and the person who was organizing it was all for it, and I would tell them stories at Indian games and stuff like that. And then eventually I started touring in the classroom. And after I did a few, I had so much demands. I did hundreds of schools. Singing, telling stories to children of all ages.
Would you have played in residential schools?
Yes, that's it. You see, when I'm talking about the courtrooms, it was in the prairie. I once did a tour with a family from Poor Man's Reserve, the Kay family, and all together there was another woman, Dorothy Francis, and me, and the family. There was 11 of us, and we toured. In 1 month, we did 64 concerts. They had overbooked us, but it's from there that eventually, by the time the 60s came, and we became citizens of the country all of a sudden, 1960, 61. Then, someone said to me, did you know, Alanis, that you're touring to all these schools, but did you know that 68% of the prisoners in Canada, I'm talking in the 60s, are indigenous people? And I didn't know that. I said, really? And he said, yeah. But I said, it looks like my relatives are in jail. I'm going to go visit them. So I started to get organized. I met this man who had been in jail, and he was an incredible man, and was working to help the prisoners. So I was the first person who went to entertain in many prisons.
What was that? What do you remember from that?
Oh, I could write a book just on that. I said, do we have time to a little bit? Yeah. One story is, one time I'm in a maximum jail in Quebec province, near Montreal. And the man who organized it, he said, you have to be very careful. He says, here, they call them, prisoners that are there, I don't know if I say the word right, but it's like stool pigeon.
Yeah, stool pigeons. The people who had told on other people, yeah.
Well, they said to me, all the prisoners that are here, that's what they're called. And they come from different provinces, and they're always in trouble. And so then this is the last place they come. In this prison, that's what it is. Didn't bother me. But me, I was thinking, I said, there's 500 prisoners. I was worried that I might look sexy. So I put on a nun's dress. Not the black dress, but an apron that they use for if they are cleaning the floor. It's got puffy sleeve, and it's anything but sexy. And so I put this on, and that way I'm not going there to tease anybody. So I arrived, and I guess the guards who were at the front were receiving me. They called them la population, the population. He said, Madame Obomsawin, you know, the population, there might be nobody coming, because it's the first time somebody comes here like this, and, they tell you all sorts of the stories that the guys were saying. I said, well, it doesn't matter. I forget the time. Let's say from 2 to 4 maybe. And I said, I'll stay until I'm allowed, and I'll leave, and it's okay. I understand. There's no problem. And meanwhile, he's talking to me. Let's say it's supposed to be 2. I could be wrong in the time. I don't remember. And 2 o'clock, nobody. And he's saying, oh, I'm so sorry. He's apologizing. I said, don't worry. It's okay, Let's say 2:15, nobody. And at one time, maybe 20 to 3 or something like that, the men start coming in. 500 guys comes in. And the floor, I think, must have been cement. And those chairs that are noisy, like those chairs that fold?
Yeah, squeaky kind of chairs. Yeah,
very noisy.
Yeah.
And I was standing there, and that man that told me all this time, he was so embarrassed because nobody was there. So he said, okay, I'll bring you to the front. He brings me to the front. You have 500 guys, flat floor, sitting there. And there's a table, and on this side of the table, there's a microphone. And I'm supposed to be on this side of the table talking to these prisoners. I said, this is crazy. I said, I'm not going to see anybody. I just see the front. So I take a chair, one of those chairs. I put it on the table. I take another chair. I got up on that chair, and then I got up on the table, and I sat on the chair. Then I could see everybody. with my nun's dress, and my drum. And so I said, I want to see who you are. If you think I'm going to hide down there, and I'm making jokes. But in the front row, there was two guys, two Quebecois men. I start to sing with my drum, and they're laughing at me. They're laughing from the heart, like it's so funny for them. Their shoulders are going like this, and they're killing themselves laughing. And me, I'm having a hard time to continue singing. So I finished the first song. I said, if you think it's funny being here, I said, I'm going to sing another song now. And I said, these two guys are killing themselves laughing at me. I said, it's hard. I said, they can come and sit in my place, and I'll sit there. We'll see how funny it is, Then in silence, you feel, I said, oh my God, they're going to get beat up or something. I was very worried. I said, no, me, I defend myself. I can take care of myself. I said, let's just see. So I started singing again, and they were smiling, but not laughing as deep as before. And then I started teaching them words in my language, and they're tapping their feet, and they're singing with me. And it was fantastic. I had a very beautiful time. And finally, the guard comes, and he said, okay, now you got to go back to your cell, and she's got to leave. So I get off my stage, come down. Do you know that not one guy went out before coming to me, holding my hand or kissing me on the cheek and thank you, including these two guys. He said, oh, we're sorry. I said, look, I must have looked a riot. I said, probably if I'd been at your place, I would have thought it was funny too. It's okay,
That's a meaningful story. I feel like you learned something from that.
It was very, and after that, a lot of the prisoners were writing to me, and so I did a lot of prisons in Canada.
When did you switch from telling stories through music through telling stories through film?
Well, I was always singing,
Yeah.
And I think it was 1998 that CBC actually did a record. It's called Bush Lady.
Yeah, we have. Can we play a little bit of Bush Lady? Just take a listen to this.
Di waldam Ana kwika kto dana Di waldam.
That's what goes through your mind here and then.
Oh my God, I haven't heard this in a long time. For me, this is the way I was singing to the children and teaching them these lullabies, these songs. And when I did Bush Lady, the big reason was really, there was so many women disappearing and being killed. And this is why I made the song, Bush Lady. And it's amazing that after all these years that it's still happening. I dare think it's a little less, but we still hear of a lot of women that disappear and are killed and beaten and sexually raped. So, and I sang in a lot of folk festival in those years. So I became known in a lot of places.
Yeah, I remember you were in, Leonard Cohen was adjacent and Buffy was around, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And eventually, where I come from is called Odanak. There was problems with our children. The next door town had a swimming pool, and one day I'm there, and the children, two of them, are crying. I said, "What's wrong?" Well, we went to go swimming, and we had the money to pay, and they said, "No savage here." So I said to the children, "Don't worry, we'll get our own swimming pool." And I was thinking, I could make a scandal and say there's racism, this and that, but why should we force our children to go to a place where they're not wanted? We have to get our swimming pool. So I did a campaign to build this. Actually, CBC made a film about it. And it's from there. When the film appeared, it was on prime time. It was called Telescope, the program.
Mm-hmm.
And people at the board saw this. And that's how I was invited to go to the film board, to go and talk to producers and directors and tell them stories like I do to children, so it was easy. And it's from there. And then they showed me there was a studio. It was called a multimedia studio. And everything they did there was for classroom. And it was through film strips. I was so excited when I saw that. And that's how I started. I first was there in 1967. And Moose Factory, the film that came out in 71, I started making that film in 1968.
We have a clip of Moose Factory. Can we play that?
She wrote a letter to Santa, then hanged it up in her stocking. Then when Santa came, Santa put a pair of skates and a radio and a pants and sweater for her. And when it was morning, she had what she wanted.
That clip is from my guest Alanis Obomsawin's first film, Christmas at Moose Factory. How does it feel to hear that? I'm sure you haven't heard that in a while either.
Yeah. Oh, I hear it all the time. People borrow that film all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's so wonderful because all those children spoke their language, and English was the second language. And, their accents is so beautiful. So, I had so much fun. I went there at least before the film came out in 71. I was having a hard time to get money to finish it. That's why it came out so late. But I went perhaps 4 or 5 times to Moose Factory, and I lived with the people. This was a residential school. I lived with the children, and during the day I went into the classrooms and told stories to the children, and so they were very used to me. So this is why at one point, after me telling them so many stories and playing with them at recreation time and running and all the business, I said, now it's your turn. You're going to tell me stories. And this is how I got them. They were so at ease. This is why this is how I made the film. It's them telling me about themselves.
I think that's so important in the story of your filmmaking is putting people at ease, giving people the space and the respect to be able to tell their story comfortably without feeling like they're being put on or like they're in front of a camera. Do you know what I mean?
This is why, I before starting a film, I always go myself alone with a tape recorder and interview them, and until I feel I really understand the story. I don't come with a camera. After a period where if I feel I don't understand here, I'll go back. And of course I have a professional recorder. And what happens is all the films I've done, mostly that way, except the ones that it's guerrilla filmmaking, you have to film as it happens. It's wonderful because when you're just alone with one person, they say things, they're at ease, and often people tell me, I never told this to anybody. And there's a lot of feeling in the voice, and so that later on, when we go with a crew, I can always go back to this material with other images, and you don't lose any feeling because it's there in the voice, and I just love it. I never get tired of listening to people, especially old people, because they carry so much knowledge and how they lived in their own country in a very bad atmosphere, and it's just unbelievable. I just love it.
I want to skip ahead a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Kanesatake, 270 Years of Resistance. And this, of course, is your 1993 film about the Oka crisis, the standoff between the army and the Mohawk warriors. This was after the mayor of Oka wanted to expand a golf course into Mohawk territory and sacred land. I want to play a clip from that to take a listen.
Army flares are frequent. On Saint Germain Road, the army sets up a checkpoint. Only a string of razor wire separates the warriors from the military.
Is it possible to get out?
Yeah, no problem to get up.
Okay.
Only
No problem to come in, too.
Problem to come in.
What problem?
Who's going to feed
What?
the animal? Why?
What? Why?
Because it's an orders.
By whom?
Alanis Obomsawin is my guest. You spent nearly 80 days filming that with these Mohawk warriors, filming the armed standoff. Tell me a story about that. What do you remember from filming that documentary?
I remember many things. I was there 78 days during the crisis, but because I couldn't do what I usually do, I stayed an extra 2 weeks to speak to some of the people I knew for sure were going to be in the film, to get those feelings that I usually get before I start filming. There were... Well, I had a crew. I had a night crew and a day crew. And one time first we were going in and out. I was going back to sleep at home. But one day I go in, we had a van and a car. And there were police officers. When you enter the village, you had to go through, they check you. And so one day the van goes in, my crew is there. I follow in the car. I'm not allowed in. And the police really insulted me and said, "You featherface, you're not coming in." And he was just very rude. And I had a card that says I could go in and out. So I had to go back to Saint-Eustache. I said to the crew, I told them, "You stay there, I'll go back to Saint-Eustache," where the police were giving us the card and the permit. So I went back and I see one of the police officers that I had seen before and I had spoke to, and he saw me and he says, "What's happening?" So I told him. He said, "You go back there and try and find the same policeman and tell him I don't have time to fool around like this." And they were very, very busy. And he says, "He better let you in." So I went back, and of course the same police officer was there. And I told him what the other police officer said. And he just laughed at me, but he let me through.
He let you through?
Yeah. But there were like some soldiers were very rude to me at times, and police officers too. And that was very heavy stuff, because everything we were doing there was difficult.
I mean, speaking of guerrilla filmmaking, I mean, you're filming something, you're filming a momentous and challenging and tragic event as it's happening, not in retrospect.
No. No. That's, it was very difficult.
Did you see Tracy Deer's film, Beans?
No, I have not seen it.
It was beautiful.
But I know, yeah.
She came on to talk about it, and she spoke about she lived through it, and she spoke through
she was a young girl then.
What a meaningful documentary that was to her.
Yeah.
I have another clip. This is not from one of your films.
No?
So the documentary comes out. The CBC speaks to you about the film. This is from '93. This is Brian Wilson. This is a CBC host I didn't know. I thought he was in the Beach Boys. This is Brian Wilson, a CBC host, talking to you about the film. Take a listen to this.
Your film has received some criticism from some quarters that it's one-sided. Well, it seems to me you are on one side of the barricades, and you don't try to disguise the fact that you've got a point of view here. But how do you handle those criticisms?
Well, I can't hide the fact that I have a point of view. That's every film I've made, there's a point of view. What I feel people try to pretend is that they don't have a point of view, and now they're upset because this point of view is being shown. I'm not pointing at anyone in the film. I think it's a mirror for this country to look at.
That's the line that I wanted to talk to you about. It's a mirror for this country to look at.
Yes, I still feel that way.
Tell me about that.
And what's incredible is that I see a lot of difference now. The problem with Kanesetake is still not resolved. There's a lot of things that has happened, but when you constantly hear from people that they're not racist and that it's just awful stuff. It's a different discourse now. This is what I'm happy about. And at that time, in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, it was very difficult for everybody. I began to really worry about people on the street who are indigenous. And for quite a long period, I was really persecuted for having made that film.
Really?
Oh, yes. But the difference is so big that was so difficult. Like I couldn't go just to any restaurant or to any place at that time, you know.
What would happen?
Well, I would be insulted, you know, for sure.
I mean, people who had seen the film, people who knew that you had made the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One time I was in a restaurant, Le Commensal, which is, I don't eat meat or fish. I never have in my life. So Commensal was a very important restaurant that I used to like to go because it was vegetarian. And one day I'm there. It was noontime. I was rushing, and I thought, I'm so hungry, I'll just go in there. So I went in, and we were lining up. You pick your food with a tray, and then you line up to go and pay at the cash. And I felt push, but I didn't turn around at first. But then a big push. And I turn and I see this woman, and she just had her head down like this. I said, look, if you want attention, push me one more time. I'll give you what you deserve. She didn't push me again. But, you know, this was this kind of stuff that was going on. Today, I don't think it would happen. But, it was very uncomfortable for quite a long time. But after, forget so many years, the film board made a coffret of the 4 films I made about Kanesatake. And then there was a lot of publicity, and I was interviewed by different people. Some people who were very mean to me that time were very different then. Even said, oh, it's a good thing you did this, and that it's a history. Sometimes the same people who really criticized me badly. So it just goes to show you, this is just one aspect of a historical aspect that was very difficult for everybody.
But it goes back to the first thing you said to me. One of the first things we said when we sat down is you said, this all has to do with education. Like, yes. I want these films to go with teaching. That, to me, is what sticks out when you say, I want this to be a mirror.
Yes. And it is. And it is, it's in all, most universities have these films, and I still get invited because they're looking at some of those films. And young people who are in their 20s, they can't believe that this happened in Canada, So, to show you the power of film is just incredible. The power of the word, for me, is sacred.
And so many more indigenous filmmakers now.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Young people, they all want to do videos, And it's wonderful for all the different communities because a lot of them are doing their own documentary at the reserve level. They're concerned with education. Before, if you spoke your language, you were punished and they made fun of you. Now, there is encouragement in every area, communities or schools, for people to learn their language. There's money there. It's a very different time. I'm so happy to see how the improvement. I'm not saying that everything is perfect.
No,
that's not true.
Still a lot of challenges there. Yeah.
But it's wonderful to see. I find young people feel responsible and they want to do something they're curious about their family. They want to hear the history. It's so rewarding. This is why, what I told you before, this is how I identify all the good people everywhere. They're everywhere too. So I prefer to talk about them than the ones who think you're inferior, because there's a lot of good people everywhere, and that are helping out, and even at the government level. And so I look at the future. I think we're going to a place we've never been there before, and it's good.
Let's talk about the new film. Yes. An honor to Senator Murray Sinclair. is about, it's framed around a powerful speech the retired Ojibwe senator gave, interspersed with testimony from residential school survivors. Senator Sinclair was the chairman of the Indian Residential Schools Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I want to play a little clip from the film of Senator Sinclair.
Thank you.
There was a lot of anger, and we as commissioners knew that we had to deal with that and had to first of all convince the intended beneficiaries of the process that they should participate, that we knew it would be hard for them to relate their stories publicly, but we knew that it was important because, quite frankly, most of Canada did not know anything about residential schools. And even those who knew about the schools being in existence, they didn't have any idea of what happened in those schools.
That was former Senator Murray Sinclair speaking in Alanis Obomsawin's new documentary, Honor to Senator Murray Sinclair. Alanis Obomsawin is here with me. Tell me a little bit about why you wanted to make this film.
Well, first I heard that he was going to get this award through the McGill College. So at first I got in touch with him, and I knew that this was happening. I said, would you allow me for us to document this, to film you? And he said, sure. So then I got permission from McGill to go in the room with the crew and document what he was saying. It was just every word he said, you're learning the history of this country. It was so incredible. I thought, oh, I have to make a film about this. I think this was 2016. And so finally, I finally made what I wanted to. And I just, every word he said was sacred. You learn something of the past, you learn something about the country, about our people. And I think it's quite a lesson to watch the film for this purpose.
Tell me about the inclusion of the testimonials from residential school survivors.
That was so special to me. Unfortunately, 2 of the women have passed away since then. And they gave their, as a witness, their story to the movement. And that's so it's not often that I use material that I didn't go there myself with the crew. So I tried to get in touch with every one of them, and I did, except these 2 women that are gone now. And Paul Vaudrak, I had the toughest time to find him. I finally found him. He's in Inuvik. And people were saying, oh, call this place. He used to work there. And everywhere it'd say he's gone. And I was getting very, very disturbed, because I didn't want to use this without him knowing and to see if it was okay with him. One day somebody's interviewing me in my house, and the phone rings, and it's Paul Vaudrak. Oh, I was so happy. I tell you, I thought, God is calling me. I'd been searching for him for a few months. And I told him about it, and I said, I just want to make sure that you know and it's okay with you, and we'll send you a copy of the film when it's finished. And he was just so happy about it. It was so nice. And he called me back another time, and he wrote something in his, I guess it must be his Facebook. So now, I felt it was okay to use these people, but I couldn't do it without them knowing.
Those are powerful moments in the film.
Oh. So we made the film. Every time I look at it, it's such a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
I just will never get used to it without feeling so much. And I think it's for everyone who looks at it will feel that way.
Maybe this is a good way to... Well, did you see the new holiday? We have a new holiday on September 30th.
Yes.
The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. How did you feel about that?
Well, I found out because I'm supposed to do a shoot that day. And they said, Alanis, did you know it's a holiday? I said, no. Just a few weeks ago they told me. So, I want to do the shoot at Wabano, the center in Ottawa, which we already did quite a bit of shooting there. And it's so beautiful. It's such a very important place. So they said, well, you can come and we'll do what we can without the clinic and all that. So That's how I found out.
You talked about Murray Sinclair. When I asked you about why you wanted to make it, you said, Senator Sinclair, you said, what a great sense of history you get off the man,
Yes.
and we were talking about education at the very beginning, and there's a quote that you read one time that really stuck with me, and this is how I want to end on it. You said, "My main interest all my life has been education, because that's where you develop yourself, where you learn to hate or love."
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I mean exactly what I said. If you're sitting in a school bench and the teacher, in my case, whenever she opened the history of Canada, I'm going to get beat up that day.
Right, because you were the only Indigenous student
Yes, in the class, in the school.
So you were learning about your own.
I was learning that we were savages, that we scalped the poor white man that came here, how we are all morons, we don't have any religion, and how bad people we are. And the language we speak is the language of Satan, of the devil. That's what I learned. So you can imagine, what do you think happened to me? All the students are looking at me. They hate me. This is, I learned it firsthand, what that felt like. And as I grew older, I just didn't want other children to go through that, which I'm sure many did at that time. And this is the reason why I'm still here. Because this is the most important place, education in the classroom. So a teacher has the opportunity to teach something great or to make people. It was obviously very designed in the book itself to create hate towards our people. And when I figured that one out, I said, I'm going to fight for change.
And you did.
I did.
And there's been change.
Mm-hmm. You should have seen me. After my father died, I remember feeling so terrible, and I said, nobody's ever going to beat me again. I could decide that, but how do you go about not getting beaten? And I made myself all kinds of rules. Just thinking. And I said, first of all, when you go to recreation, you make sure you stand by the brick wall. You never allow anybody behind you. I did all those things, and I managed.
It's such a well-deserved accolade. I didn't even the Glenn Gould Prize. I didn't even mention the Glenn. That's Glenn Gould's piano right there, by the way.
Oh,
the Glenn Gould Prize, an award given for a lifetime of work enriching the human condition through the arts.
What an honor!
Pretty good.
Oh, I'm so honored. I'm just very touched by it. Yeah. I said this yesterday again. I love Nelson Mandela, and I learned a lot of things from him. There's the book that he wrote himself. I might not say it exactly how he wrote it, but this is something that really touched me, and that I find the mind of that man so extraordinary. And 30 years in jail, and he describes that in one place that he would get beat up or he would get sent into the hole, and there was obviously a lot of arguments. He was a lawyer, and he was brilliant. And he writes in one place that whenever he got torture, or I don't know what to call it, beaten or whatever, he said he always made sure to meet the eyes of the one that's doing it to him. And he says that he always saw a little light of good. I never forgot it. And I really go by that. I say, everybody has good things about themselves, no matter how bad things they do. And this is part of my Bible. I think of him. Another time, there's 2 or 3 things that he said made me cry like a baby, but I thought, what a soul, what a mind, what generosity, and to allow everybody has something good about, and it's true. No matter what people do or say that it's very hurtful, they also have a side that's good, and we have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
It's beautiful to talk to you. Congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
You can come by whenever you want. You know?
Really?
I'll get you a key.
Oh my God! You remind me of
who?
When I was in Moose Factory.
Yeah.
Christmas time, a lot of the children, there were children there from the Quebec side. They would be allowed to go home. And then there was all the children from Moose Factory who were remaining. And there was a school in the village. And I forget how I got permission to use the school in the village to go there with children and make them do the drawings you see and all that. And talk about being cold. Sometimes it was 60 below zero. So I'd walk from the residence where I was to the village. I couldn't even turn around. I had my tape recorder on my shoulder and my purse, and I'd walk, and it's snowing, it's powdery, it's freezing, walking down a straight road. And by the time I would get to the school, the children were waiting for me in their window. And they would come out, but I couldn't even turn around because you can't breathe. I would turn around when we get to the back door of the school. I had the key. That's what you reminded me of. And I'd turn around and have maybe 15, 20 kids that have joined me. But I would only see them when I would get in the back door of that school, because there you were protected a bit, and you turn around, you saw all those kids. And I'd open the door, and I had all things that I had been allowed on the budget to buy, like paper to do drawings on, and crayon, paint. And I go in there, and my tape recorder wouldn't even work. It was frozen. Oh. And I would sit it on a radiator, and I would tell stories to the kids meanwhile, and then they're all on the floor, lying down, making drawings, and then when the tape recorder would get better, an hour later, I could use it. Can you imagine? That's how cold it was.
Now it's just on my phone, Now I can just, all that stuff you had to carry around is just on your phone,
Now, yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy then.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Alanis Obomsawin was my guest, honored at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. There's a career retrospective of her work. She is this year's recipient of the Jeff Skoll Award in Impact Media. Also being honored by the Glenn Gould Foundation. She is their Glenn Gould Prize winner, an award, as we mentioned, given for a lifetime of work that has enriched the human condition through the arts. And Alanis's latest short film, Honor to Senator Murray Sinclair, just premiered at the film festival.